Big breaking news coming from Stamford Bridge today, and that is that Frank Lampard has been sacked as manager of Chelsea Football Club. Hey guys, Fletch here, bringing you another Fletch Talks video, and this video is going to be centering around the big and major breaking news story that Frank Lampard has today been sacked by Chelsea Football Club. They have decided to sack their club hero, their icon, their legend, Frank Lampard, after the club's recent poor form in the domestic Premier League over the past month or so. The 42-year-old legend of Chelsea took over at Stamford Bridge as manager in July of 2019, succeeding former manager Maurizio Sarri. 18 months later, the Blues have today sacked him. When Lampard first arrived, of course, at the club, he already faced a number of problems that were going into that season. It included a divided fan base, a few players that were underperforming or just not hitting the level or standard that they had previously done under other regimes and managers. The club's best player, obviously, Eden Hazard, left for Real Madrid, of course. And the club were under a bit of a transfer ban. The club were, of course, under a transfer ban at the time, so no new signings could really take place during his first season in charge, and half them problems are probably what's going to happen right now due to this big breaking news story, as we'll get on to. Despite all the issues that I mentioned there, Lampard still managed to lead Chelsea to a 4th place finish, as well as being runners-up in the FA Cup, where they lost 2-1 to fierce rivals Arsenal, in what was, of course, a mad and very long season due to the COVID-19 pandemic that caused a national lockdown and saw football was suspended until the summer for that campaign to be continued and ultimately finished. It was a season that left many to debate whether or not it was a good season for Chelsea and Lampard or not. You know, the previous year under Sarri, Chelsea did manage to not only finish 3rd, but also acquire a Europa League trophy. And then fast forward a year later, of course, Chelsea lose their best player in Hazard. They had a transfer ban. They had to use more of a younger squad with the usage of their youth academy players and stuff like that. And they managed to finish 4th, as well as becoming runners-up in the FA Cup. I also think that if it weren't for the lockdown, I think Chelsea were very fortunate in having a lockdown, because I don't think Chelsea would have finished 4th. I remember at the time, Chelsea, the entire squad looked a little bit exhausted, tired, worse for wear, lack of ideas, and needed some sort of break. And I guess the lockdown, as bad as what it was, of course, for the entirety of the big picture, the lockdown, in terms of achieving that top 4 goal, helped Chelsea and became a bit of a blessing in disguise, so to speak, and in that respect. So I do feel that that played a big part in Chelsea's season. And, you know, looking at it overall, let's look at overall the bigger picture. The big picture, the overall sort of managerial career of Frank Lampard. He found himself having to use whatever resources he had at his disposal, such as the players he already had there, of course, as well as having to look at the players within his youth setup, his youth academy, so on and so forth, as I previously mentioned. There have been a lot of talk over the years about Chelsea's excellent youth setup. There have been a lot of talks over how bursting and full of talent and quality it was, and how you know, there was a lot of discussion and debate as to how Chelsea were properly using it by constantly sending many of their players that they had within there out on loan and to many different clubs. And there wasn't really talk about many of them kind of players getting a big chance within the Chelsea starting lineup. But here, Lampard had very little choice in doing that. He had to basically put his trust and his faith in some of them players. And you know, some of them came through. The likes of Reece James and Mason Mount have clearly stepped up to the mark and made a name for themselves, so to speak, right now, and have become prize assets in that Chelsea squad. But when the transfer ban was lifted, of course, it meant that the Blues could reintroduce big money signings into their squad again. Granted, they still had managed to spend a huge £40 million in the previous transfer window, despite being under a transfer ban, because they managed to find a loophole to buy Mateo Kovacic from Real Madrid after the Croatian midfielder was, of course, on loan at Stamford Bridge the previous season when under Maurizio Sarri. But going forward into this current campaign, of course, with everything that was going on, Chelsea had, I felt, more of a head start over everybody else because the current pandemic was going on, and it meant that everybody was trying to find ways of saving money, and football clubs were no different. And of course, having a few of their big name players be sold in previous transfer windows to acquire more funds meant that they could obviously spend more. Add that to the amount of the usual sponsorship money that they receive, the TV money that they receive, and last season's earnings from various competitions, Chelsea did have a lot of money at their disposal this season. And so with all that being said, and with the money that they had at their disposal, the beginning of this season saw 6 big names arrive at Stamford Bridge as a minimum. There were plenty more, of course, but there were 6 big names that were mainly highlighted throughout the end of the last campaign and the beginning of this one, which took Chelsea's spending to somewhere in the region of a whopping £230 million. Give or take, of course, because transfers are very weird in how they're done with the overall fees and the add-ons and everything that goes on between the two clubs and their contracts. The players that arrived that were worthy of note were Timo Werner, Hakim Ziyech, Ben Chilwell, Edouard Mendy, Thiago Silva, and Kai Havertz. And Thiago Silva was essentially a free transfer, so essentially that was 5 players taking up to a total of 230 million. Those were the 6 huge names that were highlighted, and separately they made names for themselves at their previous and former clubs respectively. You look at the likes of Werner. He was seen in Germany as being a promising and deadly striker. You see that Ziyech was tearing up Eredivisie with Ajax for a number of years before joining Chelsea. Chilwell was one of the best Premier League left-backs over the past recent years, and Mendy probably was less known to everybody, but still one of the French League's most promising goalkeepers. Silva, of course, was well known. He was a strong defender who possessed a lot of leadership and plenty of experience and was going to be a worthy addition, everybody thought, to a Chelsea backline that needed those kind of strengths. Whilst Havertz was a boy wonder. He was seen as being the next big thing in Germany, in the German midfield, as a midfielder overall. He was seen as the next big thing as an attacking midfielder, but so far, all of them haven't quite hit the ground running as much as what the fans, and Frank Lampard in particular, would have wanted them to do. But look, no one was expecting all of them to gel all at once. It was very unlikely that that situation would happen. Many people said it would take time for this new team to settle. No squad was ever built overnight. Just ask the likes of Pep Guardiola, Jurgen Klopp, Carlo Ancelotti, so on and so forth. No squad, no Championship, Premier League, Champions League, whatever competition you want to call it, no squad was ever built overnight for instant success. And when it was going well, it was fine, but suddenly over the past month or so, the wheels have appeared to have come off of Chelsea's season a little, and suddenly the finger is getting pointed at the price tag of the players, and of course that they should be doing more, as well as the manager, who they claim should be doing more as well. All these players, though, have shown glimpses of what they can do and why Chelsea bought them. They've shown flashes of their brilliance and why Chelsea have bought them all together. And for the most part, these players, I feel they can be good over time. I feel in the long term, these players, most of them anyway, can obviously show more and more as to how good they really are, and as a team they can gel and they can be much better as a whole than as just individuals. I have no doubt in my mind that Havertz and Werner in particular, the big money signings, will come good over time. I just felt they needed more time to get used to the league, and maybe next season you can probably see them both kick on and really start to flourish. Of course, now under Lampard, that won't happen, but maybe under a new manager it might. As of right now, Lampard leaves Chelsea halfway through the current season with ninth place in the table with 29 points after 8 wins, 5 draws and 6 losses from their first 19 games of the season. And of course, 5 of those defeats have actually come within the past couple of months alone. You know, it's been a crazy season. It keeps on being reiterated, but it has been a crazy season for everybody. Every team is showing signs of weakness or just not handling the current state of the game very well due to the pandemic, the empty stadiums, so on and so forth. As inconsistency is showing to be a constant factor in everybody's game right now. But for Chelsea, it's been highlighted more, I feel, because of the amount of money that's been thrown around at the club. And it's kind of backfired for them a little bit, because I feel that more than ever, due to the current pandemic and global situation, and of course relating it to football here, how other clubs have reacted to try and save money, and Chelsea obviously haven't had that kind of problem because they've had the funds, they've had the luxury of having the funds to protect themselves and also invest in the squad. So I feel like that has kind of backfired and gone against Chelsea a little bit going forward into now the current campaign as to where they lie in the table and putting everything into perspective. From a fan's point of view, I don't imagine too many Chelsea fans will be happy about this call, in all honesty. I think there will be a few Chelsea fans that will accept that maybe Lampard possibly was the right man but at the wrong time. But I think the majority will not be happy of the board's overall decision to sack him, because it's poor treatment of a club legend, in my opinion. It's a young manager with plenty of time on his side, but the lack of patience in the board has become a big factor over the years. And of course, Chelsea aren't alone in this. There are plenty of other teams that have shown a lack of patience, but of course, Chelsea are probably the bigger or the biggest club to have shown this kind of mentality over their recent choice of managers. If you're not winning the big prizes, it seems, they don't want to be waiting around much longer to not have a challenging squad for them, it seems. And, you know, if I'm right in thinking that the Blues supporters are unhappy with this decision, then I can safely assume that the owners, the backroom staff, and the club hierarchy behind the scenes are very, very lucky and very, very fortunate that with football in its current state of being played in empty stadiums, they are very lucky that there are no fans in that stadium, because I imagine that the Blues supporters, the Blues faithful, would definitely have something to say to them about this situation. And just a quick note on the alleged Blues successor, the alleged Lampard successor. It's being said that former Borussia Dortmund and PSG manager Thomas Tuchel is being lined up to be his likely replacement. The German manager, of course, left PSG last month in December, but is seemingly seen as a manager for the present and the future, and is seemingly going to be the next Chelsea manager. But again, on his arrival, as I mentioned earlier in this video, I see similar problems brewing at Chelsea that Lampard had to deal with when he came in. Tuchel, of course, will be coming in, and I imagine that if this is going down the way I imagine, he will be facing a lot of them problems as well. A divided fan base and a squad of underperforming players that he'll have to sort out. Problem is with Tuchel, he has no affiliation with the club. He has no previous kind of alignment with the club in any kind of way. So it might be a lot more difficult for him to heal those kind of wounds and to heal those kind of problems than what Lampard did upon his arrival. And look, in my opinion, I believe the club have got this wrong. I understand that a lot of money has been used at this club over the past couple of years under Lampard's regime. I understand that Chelsea were probably planning on a title challenge this season, along with maybe a successful cup run. And yes, granted, the league could still be up for grabs because this is a mad and crazy season in which we're only halfway through it. And of course, the FA Cup is still a possibility. The Champions League is still a possibility because they're still in it. But it's going to be a massive uphill battle to achieve them goals, you'd have to feel. And, you know, I still think that Lampard needed more time. I still think that is the overall bottom line here. Lampard still needed more time to gel these players in, get a stable squad together, and really look to build for the future. Chelsea at times looked very good on the pitch. I remember times last season Chelsea were playing some very exciting and attacking football, and I was actually, for the first time ever, you know, even as a Liverpool fan, I was actually looking at Chelsea and going, they're actually enjoyable to watch now. There were still some things that needed to be addressed, of course. That was due to a lack of probably inexperience on both the players and the manager's part, in which Chelsea were leaking goals, but they were very entertaining to watch. But I felt that would come with time. I felt with time, everything would fall into place. Chelsea would become a better squad overall, both attacking and defensively, and Lampard would become a better manager for it. But of course, now that time has completely gone because of his dismissal, of course. And I just think that the club have really acted poorly and treated this guy poorly, to a man who's given everything to the club that he could when he was a player, and therefore became the icon and the legend that he was to so many Blue supporters during his playing time there. And they've just tossed him aside and gone, you're not good enough, we're looking to go to the next thing. It happens in football, I understand the money aspect, but I think to treat a icon of a club this poorly just reflects so badly on the club. But of course, this is just the opinions and thoughts, comments, ramblings, predictions, whatever you want to call it, of one guy, this guy. I want to know what you guys think in the comment section below, especially the Chelsea fans. What do you make of the sacking of Frank Lampard? What do you make of the possible replacement of Thomas Tuchel? What do you make of the club's reaction overall, the club as a whole on this situation? I'd love to know your thoughts, comments, opinions on this subject down below in the comment section. I'm sure they'll all make for interesting reading. Otherwise, hit that like button on the way out if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe if you're new or want to see more content like this. Both things will be greatly appreciated. And as always, thank you all so much for watching and listening. I've been Fletch. This has been another Fletch Talks video, and I will see and speak with you all again soon in another video.